From your very first history lectures to the most well-known economics textbooks, you've been fed a fairy tale. It's a story so deeply ingrained in our collective mind that we never even think to question it. It goes like this. Once upon a time, before money existed, people engaged in barter. You had a chicken, and your neighbor had a pair of shoes. But what if you wanted shoes, and your neighbor didn't want your chicken? Economists named this the double coincidence of wants. It was a terrible headache. So, the story goes, clever early humans invented a medium of exchange. They decided to use rare, shiny metals, gold and silver, to act as money. Eventually, these metals evolved to coins, then paper, and now, digital numbers on a screen. It's a satisfying, logical, and perfectly reasonable story, but there is a problem. It never happened at all. There is no anthropological or historical evidence to support the idea that money arose from barter. None. So, if money didn't come from barter, where exactly did it come from? And more importantly, what is it? Today, we are going to reveal the illusion of money. We will dive into the forgotten masterpiece of economic literature. A 1913 article titled What is Money? By a British diplomat named Alfred Mitchell-Innes. We are going to prove to you that money is not a thing. It is not a gold. It is not a paper. Money, since the early beginning of human civilization, has been exactly one thing: credit and debt. Buckle up, because once you grab the true nature of money, you will never look at the world or your bank account the same way again. We promise you that you will be a different person if you really understand what money is. To understand Mitchell-Innes's groundbreaking revelation, we first have to completely destroy the barter myth and change our perspective. The greatest minds in classical economics, most notably Adam Smith, built their entire theories on the foundation of barter. They assumed that human beings have a natural tendency to truck, barter, and exchange one thing for another. But let's think about this logically. Imagine a small, ancient village. Everyone knows everyone. If you are a blacksmith and you need wheat, you don't go wandering around the village hoping the farmer desperately needs a new horseshoe that exact same moment. Instead, you just ask the farmer for the wheat. Because you are neighbors, the farmer gives it to you. But now, you owe him. A ledger is virtually created. A debt is recorded in the social fabric of the village. Later, when the farmer needs a plow repaired, you fix it, and the debt is settled. There was no transaction involving shiny metal coins. However, there was only a mutual obligation in the society. Mitchell-Innes pointed out that trade didn't begin with the exchange of goods for goods. It began with the exchange of goods for credit that is legit for everyone in the society. He wrote, "The eye of the economist has been so obsessed by the concept of the coin that he has failed to see the underlying reality, that the coin is merely the token of a debt." Think about the word for pay for a moment. It originates from the Latin word pacare, which means to appease or to pacify. When you pay someone, you are not providing them a magical token of intrinsic value. You are pacifying a debt. You are restoring the balance. For thousands of years, humans ran complex economies spanning vast empires without ever needing a standardized coin or paper money. They did it through meticulous accounting. Credit is not a modern invention that came after money. Credit is money. And it came long before the first coin was ever struck. If money is essentially debt, then how do we quantify it? Here is Mitchell-Innes's next massive paradigm change. Money is not an object. Money is a unit of measure. Consider the concept of an inch or a centimeter. You can hold a ruler that measures in inches, but you cannot hold an inch itself. An inch is an abstract concept that we create to measure physical space. In the exact same way, a dollar, a euro, or a lira is a theoretical unit of measure used to quantify debt and credit. You cannot physically hold a dollar. You can only hold a piece of paper that represents a dollar's worth of credit. To prove this, Mitchell-Innes takes us back to medieval England. At that time, precious metal coins were incredibly scarce. The average peasant might live for years without ever seeing a single silver coin. Yet, they traded properly and constantly. How? They used something called a tally stick. Imagine a simple stick of hazelwood. When two people made a transaction, they would carve notches into the stick to represent the amount of the debt. Then, they would split the stick straight down the middle. The debtor kept one half. The creditor kept the other half, which was called the stock. By the way, this is exactly where the modern financial term stock market comes from. If the creditor wanted to purchase something from a third person, they didn't need gold or silver. They simply handed over their half of the tally stick. They were transferring their credit. The debt itself worked as money. This system didn't just last for a few years. The British Empire, one of the most powerful economic engines in human history, ran on wooden tally sticks for over 600 years. It was only in 1826 that the Bank of England finally destroyed the system and literally burned the millions of tally sticks in their possession, a fire so massive it actually burned down the Houses of Parliament. The tally stick fits Innes's thesis perfectly. The wood had no intrinsic value. It wasn't backed by gold. It was valuable since it was illegally recognized as a record of debt. Now, you might be asking the obvious question. If money is just debt, and anyone can issue a debt, why do we all use the same currency? What gives the piece of paper in your wallet its global purchasing power? For decades, we were told it was the gold standard. We were told money had value because it was backed by gold locked in a vault somewhere. Mitchell-Innes calls this the metalist fallacy. The true answer is much more profound, and it brings us to the ultimate authority in any economy: the state. Think about it. Why do you accept government-issued currency? You accept it only because you have to, and you have to because of taxes. The state does not need to tax you to fund itself. This is another massive illusion. The state is the only issuer of the currency. It can print or create as much as it wants. Why would it need to take your money? It doesn't. According to Innes, the state issues money to provision itself. It wants to build roads, raise armies, and run courts. To get you to do that work, it imposes a tax liability on you. It says, you owe the sovereign 10 tokens a year, and the only way you can pay that tax, the only way you can stay out of prison, is by earning my specific tokens. Suddenly, everyone is rushing to get the state's tokens. The tax liability creates the demand for the currency. When a sovereign state stamps its seal on a coin or a piece of paper, it is not saying, this object is inherently valuable. It is saying, I, the state, promise to accept this token in payment of the taxes you owe me. Let that sink in. Government money is just an I.O.U. issued by the state, which simply means I owe you. Imagine you are at a coffee shop with a friend, but you forgot your wallet. Your friend pays $5 for your coffee. You grab a napkin, write I owe you $5, along with your signature, and hand it to your friend. This shows them that you recognize the debt and will not forget to pay them back. When you pay your taxes, the state isn't collecting its money to spend later. When the state's I.O.U. returns to the state, the debt is canceled. The money is legally destroyed and burned out. Main goal of the taxes is not to fund the government, but to drive the currency. They are the anchor that ties the abstract unit of measure to real world. So, how does this 1913 theory apply to the digital screens we look at today? It explains absolutely everything. When you go to a bank to take out a mortgage to buy a house, the bank does not step into a vault and pull out a bag of pre-existing money. The bank does not even lend you other people's savings. When you sign that loan agreement, the bank simply types numbers into a computer, create a deposit in your account, and simultaneously create a loan on their balance sheet. They create money out of nothing by creating a debt. Just like the ancient villagers, just like the medieval tally sticks, the mechanism has become digital, but the underlying concept hasn't changed for 5,000 years. Money is an accounting system. It is a vast, interconnected web of credits and debts, constantly expanding as new loans are made, and contracting as loans are paid off. When you understand this, the headlines you read every day start to look very different. When central banks print trillions with keystrokes, they aren't printing physical objects, they are expanding the ledger. When a financial crisis hits, it's not because the world ran out of money, it's because the chain of promises broke down and the credit system froze. Alfred Mitchell-Innes was a visionary who looked past the shiny metals and the complex banking facades to see the fundamental truth of human cooperation and obligation. He showed us that money is not an object we exchange, but a social relationship and obligation we share. It is the language we use to quantify our obligations to one another, and most importantly, to the state. The next time you tap your card or look at a banknote, remember, you are not holding wealth in your hand. You are holding a piece of a magnificent invisible ledger that brings us together.